provide equal opportunity in this country, provided that you're not a male, provided that you're not a minority. Their whole objective in this country is to put it in their lingo, to flip the script. That's what this division is leading to. There's more hatred coming out of this administration towards white people than any administration in our nation's history. It wasn't enough. It has never been enough that the government stepped in and made sure that laws were put in place so that every citizen in this country was provided with an equal opportunity. It is now incumbent upon them to ensure that that there is not an equal opportunity anymore. The fundamental transformation of this country means that you must stop the equal rights, and you must now put those in the minority in the majority.
That's a fundamental transformation.
It is my theory that this administration seeks to divide this country, not along economic lines, as some of the more astute talking heads like to say. Has nothing to do with economic lines. It's entirely along racial lines. The First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama, has made no secret of her hatred for those of the white race. The only time she's ever been proud to be an American is when her husband was elected president. Imagine what would have happened if there had been pictures of Laura Bush during George Bush's campaign. What if there had been pictures of Laura Bush at a Ku Klux Klan rally? George Bush would have never made it past a primary. But yet there's plenty of pictures of Michelle Obama at Black Panther rallies. No one wants to mention that. That's an uncomfortable truth.
Yeah, you're not supposed to talk about that.
No, we're not. Which brings us around. By the way, we very well may run over just a tad tonight because I got a lot of audio to get out, man. But it brings us back around to the comments made by Bill O'Reilly last night on race relations in this country. Eric Holder, you want to have an honest conversation about race in this country? President Obama, would you like to have an honest conversation about race in this country? You want to know where all of the animosity and everything is coming from in this country?
It's coming from the White House.
And your sheer denial of facts and statistics that do not lie. Listen to Bill O'Reilly, and you people tell me where Bill O'Reilly was being racist.
To disaster, both socially and economically. Trayvon Martin was killed because circumstances got out of control. He was scrutinized by neighborhood watchman George Zimmerman because of the way he looked. Not necessarily his skin color, there's no evidence of that, but because he was a stranger to Zimmerman and was dressed in clothing sometimes used by street criminals. It was wrong for Zimmerman to confront Martin based on his appearance. But the culture that we have in this country does lead to criminal profiling because young black American men are so often involved in crime. The statistics, overwhelming. But here's the headline. Young black men commit homicides at a rate 10 times greater than whites and Hispanics combined. When presented with damning evidence like that, and like the mini Holocaust in Chicago where hundreds of African Americans are murdered each year, the civil rights industry looks the other way or makes excuses. They blame guns, poor education, lack of jobs. Rarely do they define the problem accurately. So here it is. The reason there is so much violence and chaos in the black precincts is the disintegration of the African American family. Right now, about 73% of all black babies are born out of wedlock. That drives poverty. And the lack of involved fathers leads to young boys growing up resentful and unsupervised. When was the last time you saw a public service ad telling young black girls to avoid becoming pregnant? Has President Obama done such an ad? How about Jackson or Sharpton? Has a congressional black caucus demanded an ad like that? How about the PC pundits who work for NBC News? White people don't force black people to have babies out of wedlock. That's a personal decision, a decision that has devastated millions of children and led to disaster both socially and economically.
Now, it's perfectly acceptable for the president to stand up on his podium and say, Trayvon could have been me. Or if I had a son, he'd look just like Trayvon. That's one instance where the president is stepping in on race. Remember when he called the actions of the Connecticut police when they arrested a black man, a black professor, who was acting outlandishly and screaming and causing a disturbance? He said they acted stupidly. The president has taken it upon himself at every instance in this country to inject himself on race. And the only way that he's ever injected himself into the race argument is to put the blame on white America. Those white police acted stupidly for doing their job. George Zimmerman acted stupidly for stepping in and trying to protect his neighborhood. It was shown during those 911 calls that Zimmerman made that the dispatcher had to practically drag it out of him what color Trayvon was because he couldn't tell. But in this country, when you want to talk about race, no one wants to talk about any of the things Bill O'Reilly mentioned. Those are key important factors in race relations in this country. I heard all week after O'Reilly has made those statements, all week, about how unfair it is to profile in this country. How unfair it is that people seem to be wanting to point out all of those disparities going on in the black community, but they don't want to talk about, the important things going on in the black community, about how unfairly they're treated, and about how all they're really interested in is equal opportunity. Casey, can you name one law to me? One law in this country that discriminates against any color?
I'm working on it.
There are none. It's because there are none. Because in this country, all men are created equal. It took a long time for this country to finally get that right. But in this country right now, it is possible for a black man, a Hispanic man, it's possible for a woman to gain the highest office in the land. But that's not enough. It's not enough in this country. Those aren't things that's important. What's important is that we keep reminding everyone how horrible race relations are in this country.
Yeah, we got to keep that going because, man, look, there's a lot of money in that. Jesse Jackson's got to eat. Sharpton's got to eat. Farrakhan's got to eat.
Thank you for bringing up Sharpton. Because he couldn't let this go. He couldn't let O'Reilly off the hook with that. Here's Sharpton's take on things. 2 little clips.
So why are some right-wing pundits so afraid of having an honest conversation about issues that we're still facing in this country? I mean, what are they afraid of?
Oh, I'll tell you, blacks, Hispanics, and women.
See, that's one of the answers he gets from his guests. From the mainstream media, who is helping the president, who is helping all of these race baiters, all of the industry of civil rights in this America. When you say, why is the right wing trying to, what are they scared of? Oh, well, they're scared of blacks, they're scared of Hispanics, and they're scared of women. Could I get some proof of that? there any offer of proof? And what about what Bill O'Reilly said? He laid out a pretty good case. As a matter of fact, Alan West went on his show the very next night and said, I really didn't see anything you said wrong there, Bill. Pretty much hit the nail right on the head. Bill O'Reilly was saying the exact same things that Alan West himself has said. He's saying the exact same things that Reverend Ken Hutcherson has said.
Or Thomas Sowell.
Or David Manning. He said the exact same thing that just about virtually every single conservative black man in America has said. And by the way, if they're not having the same opportunities, tell me something. How did Alan West get to his position?
How about Thomas Sowell?
How did Thomas Sowell become one of the most respected economic minds in this country? I don't know. But there's more. He couldn't believe what Bill O'Reilly and Rush Limbaugh was talking about.
I don't know anybody that has not been dealing in the black community and the civil rights community with the black family and the need to strengthen it. We're dealing with births. We're dealing with the whole question of violence. I mean, you know that I talked about on the show last night. Not only did we do a lot on Trayvon Martin here, when Hadia Pendleton, a young 15-year-old black girl, was killed by blacks in Chicago, we put her mother on this show first, and I stayed on that. Preached a 4-year-old kid's funeral last year, black kid killed by blacks. But they will not deal with the question of inequality. We want to deal with all of it. They only want to deal with anything other than the fact that we still have a challenge of racial injustice and profiling in this country.
And that's the only thing that you want to talk about. And you want to talk about racial inequality. Where is it? Where is it, Reverend Al? Show anybody where there is racial inequality in this country. Show me. Unless, of course, you want to talk about the little girl down in Texas that was applying for a scholarship and was more qualified than the actual applicants that got it, but the only qualification she didn't have was that she wasn't black. That's racial inequality. Or how about those firemen? How about the firemen up in New York who had taken their test, but who were told they couldn't get the job because they didn't have enough of the black applicants. The black applicants said the test wasn't fair, so the test wasn't fair. Sorry, white guys, even though you passed with flying colors, even though you've been in the job longer than any of these people, even though you have more experience in the business, sorry, we got to give it to the black guys. Because after all, they're black. That's racial inequality. He's so angry with Bill O'Reilly for pointing out all of the disparities that are actually going on in the black community, how 73% of all black children in this country are born fatherless, out of wedlock.
No, he doesn't want to look at that.
And he says he's addressing it. When? Where? How do you have time to address that when you're so busy talking about how evil the white man is, Al? Is that how you address it?
Well, he did say they're dealing with all of it. The thing is, how he's dealing with it is not helping.
No, he's perpetuating it.
Exactly.
That's how they deal with it. They perpetuate it further. After all, if people got along like we really are, and people realized just how far this country had come, people like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson wouldn't have a job. But they're not the only one. How about the educated? How about it just cracks me up when people like Toure, who went to a $40,000 a year school, wants to tell me how unfair it is for black America when it comes to education. Toure, you went to a $40,000 a year high school, man. How in the world, if it is so unfair, if there's so much racial inequality in America, particularly in the area of education. Hey,